for allowing us to interview you.
Absolute pleasure, Lebo. Thank you for letting me be part of your docu.
My first question to you is, what was your biggest dream growing up? Who did you see yourself as?
Growing up in the streets of Soweto, I grew up around teachers and nurses. My mother was a teacher for 45 years before she went home to be the Lord. So I had this dream of wanting to become a teacher. And because I was also surrounded by teachers, my uncle was a teacher, my elder sister is actually a teacher. She teaches Go to Kloof. So I believe that teaching really is a calling. And I think, teachers don't get enough credit. Every child, first of all, they land on a teacher's hands, and then it's a teacher that impacts that life. Of course, parents have a role to play, but so I really wanted to become a teacher.
So how did you move from wanting to be a teacher to modeling?
My mother, may her soul rest in peace, was a wise woman, and in being able to keep us off the streets. Now, I have to give a bit of a background. I have 2 elder sisters and 1 younger brother. And to be able to keep us off the streets, really, she got us very much involved in all sorts of extracurricular activities. You were in the youth camp, you were in the church choir, you were in the Sunday school, you were so busy, you were entered into some beauty competition as and when she decided you're going to enter this competition. So really it's not because something that I really wanted to do in my life. It was my mother's really ingenious thoughts to say, okay, how am I going to be able to keep these young girls off the streets? So we entered a lot of beauty pageants nowadays, my sisters and I. And also, I mean, with the beauty pageants, you would win prizes. So my mom realized that, okay, if they enter those competitions, I can actually furnish my home. So my elder sister, she entered Miss King Kong El Rato, and she won a fridge. And I remember when I entered Miss Black South Africa, I won a lounge suite. When Johanna entered Miss Inter University, she won a car, an Uno. So those competitions in those days, they really would help our family to make ends meet somewhat. So so it was really, through my mother's believing in us as well. I mean, it's wonderful to have a parent who believed in you and encouraged you.
And what is the one thing that you think you needed to hear at the age of 14? I mean, you're an extremely beautiful woman, but have you always been this confident? What do you think you really needed to hear at least 14, 15, those teenage years?
Okay, let me deal with the first or the latter part of your question. Now, I've never always been a confident person. People who know me very well know me that I'm actually a very shy person. I'm intrinsically very, very shy. But early on in my adulthood, I figured out that being shy doesn't pay bills. It won't pay bills. So I needed to get over that very quickly. But when I was 14, now my dad gave me a book by the name of the book was The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And at 14, we were brought up in a home where we were allowed to dream. We were allowed to ask questions. We were allowed to challenge the status quo somewhat, but we never got away with it, because my mother was a very firm, formidable Xhosa matriarch. So her word was law. You never argued, you never debated. You just actually just said, ma'am, yes, how high should I jump? When she asked you to do something. But at 14, I was told, and it was instilled in me, and even with my siblings, that you can become anything you want to become, as long as you work hard. So we're brought up with a strong work ethic at home. Though my dad was a bus driver and my mom was a teacher, they're also, were very enterprising people. I mean, outside of their 8 to 5, they were enterprising, able to help put food on the table, clothes on our back, a roof over our head. So, they started a construction company. From doing a construction company, they went on into doing all sorts of other businesses. Now, I have to tell you this, when I was 6, I started selling sweets. When other kids were playing the school ground during break time, I was peddling lollipops. During weekends, my sisters and I would sit at soccer stadiums and sell ice cream and sandwiches that we made at home. When other kids were playing after school, I used to sell a tray of boiled eggs up and down our street. So this entrepreneurial spirit, I was imbued with it from a very young age, because watching my own parents work hard. My mother used to have a sewing machine, and after school she'd sit on her sewing machine and make curtains and sew curtains. And her and Papa used to go to Kwakwa at the end of each month to sell these curtains. I'll tell you stories about how phenomenal these parents that have brought me up were, and what they instilled in one at a very tender age.
So how did you move from modeling to production?
I entered Miss South Africa, not my mother. Let me also just paraphrase that. So I was a varsity I was in my third year studying towards my teacher's degree. And my mother decided, you know what? It's 1994, I'm going to enter into the Miss South Africa competition. You never argued. You're just like, yes, ma'am, I'm going to enter the competition. So anyway, I entered Miss SA, and of course I won the pageant, and then I had to represent South Africa at Miss World, and South Africa came second. It was India, South Africa, and Venezuela in 1994. And of course, being on the global stage, it opened a whole new world of media to me that I was never exposed to. And I actually fell in love with the medium of television, of broadcasting, of engaging with people and audiences. And then I started to present top billing, because of course as Miss South Africa, you get invited in different platforms. And that's how I actually met my partner in Relebohile Productions, Patience Stevens. She then approached me to say, would I be interested in presenting the show? And I said, of course. I'd never even thought about me being a presenter, but it's also not being afraid to try new things, and being not being afraid to fail and challenging yourself. So I started presenting top billing. Fast forward, I'm a person who gets bored very quickly. So after 3 months of presenting and reading or regurgitating very wrong a script, I thought there's got to be more to television than reading somebody else's lines. And then I really wanted to understand the business of television. That for me really was much more fascinating, around what happens behind the scenes, how concepts are created and churned, and how you start from an idea to an implementation and to seeing it post. So, and I sat down with Patience, who was my mentor and who continues to be a dear friend and partner today. 22 years later, we're still at it.
Wow.
And so, yes, then I decided, why don't we start a company? Let's call it Relebohile. I'm Zwana. And of course, as Relebohile means progress. Patience says, I love it, and let's partner. And both joined the company 50-50, on the company 50-50, and yeah, we've gone on to produce television shows such as Top Billing, Top Travel, Basetsana, Says Corner, the list is endless. But then also the entrepreneur in me gets bored very quickly. So at Relebohile Productions, we focus mainly on lifestyle properties. And then I decided I wanted to also just tell stories that resonated with South Africans. And so 2012, I started a company called Connect TV, and really focused more on the reality genre. So I produce shows like Utata, Date My Family, Our Perfect Wedding, Please Step In,
Disky Divas.
So I love television. I love the medium. I love that you can be able to inspire, to educate, to entertain, to inform. It really affords you that band.
And what has been your biggest challenge this far?
Running your own business is very hard, and working with people is very, very hard. So managing people has its own challenges. And as an entrepreneur, I've invested in different businesses over there. Some have worked, some have not worked. I've made some spectacular failures. I went into a retail business in 1999. I bought into a retail operation, and it didn't work. I had done my DD on it, but the business by month 3 was not churning what was projected. So hindsight, best science, of course, realized that the books at the time were, tampered with, and the projections of what the business was potentially going to make, were not true reflection of what the business was making. So learned a tough lesson, paid my school fees there. And but business and entrepreneurship and just life is about, when you fail, picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and just keeping at it, and not quitting. I often say to young people that I mentor that failure is not final. It's another opportunity to start over again. I often say as well, to many young people that I mentor, whether doctors and people in the arts, engineers, is that rather you try something in life and fail spectacularly at it, and not doing anything at all, and live a life of regret when you're 50, 60, 70 and wonder what could have been if I had tried this. Should have, could have, wish I could have done something. And time by then is not on your side. So it's about using your youth, using your talent, using your gifts that God has bestowed you with for the greater good, and really just impacting to write a different narrative about South African black excellence, and what can be achieved if you work hard and you're committed, you're dedicated, and you put in the hours. There are no shortcuts to success.
Yes. And what are your words to young children or young youth that want to go into the industry?
It's a cutthroat industry. I often caution against people wanting to get into this business because they want to be famous. No. You can't wake up and say, oh, I want to be famous. Then you've got the absolute wrong objective. You got to understand the nuances of the business and how to have longevity in the business. You know, a new talent is born every day. And it's how you can be able to sustain your brand equity over time. And so if you want to get into this business, you have to understand the business of television. You have to understand the machinations, what happens behind the scenes. But more importantly, you have to understand that it's not an overnight success. You cultivate your success over time.
Thank you so much for allowing me to interview.
Absolute pleasure.
It was great. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, baby girl. Well done.